You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
Thanks for pressing play on the Two and Out CFL podcast. I am here this week with Joe Balaneski since Travis is away on assignment in the mountains with Taylor for her birthday, I think. How is your weekend, Joe?
Okay, it's typical family stuff, running errands. Even went to the Elks team store yesterday to only find out they're closed on the weekends now. Apparently, I should have used Google to find that out. But yeah, no, it was good. It's been quiet. I mean, got to watch some football.
Yeah, well, that's good. And you got some ribs on right now.
I got ribs on. So yeah, we got to make this a quick one because they're due. They're going to be done here in about 45 minutes. Then I got to let them sit.
You got it. So this weekend, I went 0-3 for my predictions. How did you fare in your predictions? Or did you have any, I guess?
I gave up on Pick'em. I don't know how long ago this in the season. I found that the scoring on there is really weird on the CFL site. I couldn't understand how I was getting points, but then I wasn't getting points, and even though I was getting games right, so I just gave up on the Pick'ems. I still do the fantasy, but yeah, when it came to the games, I think I would have went 0-3. I think majority of people went 0-3. I don't think the results were as expected, we'll say.
No, definitely not. Okay, before we get into the games there is some news notes that I'm just going to kind of bounce through here. So one pertains to your team, the Edmonton Elks. They signed 6 players to the PR, notably AC Leonard back in the green and gold. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was I don't want to say it was a shock, but I know there was some rumored controversy between him being released earlier in the year and basically pricing himself out. I don't know if that had to do with the former coach we had here, but I think that we might have some injuries on the D line, and obviously he's a highly skilled player. I mean, I don't think there's a CFL team that wouldn't want AC Leonard on their defensive line. So and I saw today Dave Campbell was tweeting that he was actually on the field practicing with the team. So yeah, it's good to have him back, I guess, but it also is a little concerning considering the Elks defensive line has been playing really, really well the last, month and a half or so. So it always sucks to see somebody get injured, but if that's the case, then at least we're replacing him with a valid, bona fide all-star in the league, right? So
yeah, and hopefully he can get back to game shape as quick as he can for you guys there. So the CFL teams also released 10 names from their negotiation lists. Do we care?
No. Yeah. I don't. I glanced at the article when they released it, and it was kind of comical. At the very top of that article, it said, "Here are former players that were on negotiation lists," and like Khalil Pimpleton and a few others. And I was just like, and I glanced through it. I'm like, I don't recognize any of these names. I won't recognize any of those names if they ever join the squads. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think anybody in the league does. I don't even know what a negotiation list really means, but.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's basically for non-Canadians who are draft eligible. So basically, any American college player you can put on your neg list, and then you have the first dibs, I guess, at signing them. I think it's kind of pointless. It's just a news article for the sake of news article. When they first were released back in the day, I thought it was kind of cool, but after seeing how they just change, it changes every year and it changes multiple times a year, so you really don't know who's on it really at any given time.
That's only 10 players too. I would assume there's probably more.
I think there's
players
40.
Yeah, so 40. They're only releasing 25% of the list. So yeah, and I guess you don't want your competition knowing who you're scouting, I guess. But I mean, because wasn't Curtis Rourke on there a couple of years ago on somebody's team?
Well, I don't know if he could be since he's Canadian, because I don't think you can have Canadians on there unless they've already been past their draft year.
Somebody was on there, though. Some quarterback. Maybe I'm.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was somebody that was on a neg list, and I was just like,
I know the Riders had Mason Fine on their neg list for quite a long time before he actually came up. So it does happen. It's just.
But he turned out pretty well.
Mid, yeah, mid, pretty mid. Sticking with the CFL, they also rebranded their All-Star wording to All-CFL.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I don't know why. I think there's a lot more important things the CFL could probably focus on rather
Mm-hmm.
than some, I don't know what semantics, I guess we can
Mm-hmm.
say. But the thing with the All Stars is that it's kind of it's kind of weird how it's all like laid out with, I saw somebody tweet the other day that it'd be best if there was just All Stars. There wasn't an East versus West kind of competition,
Mm-hmm.
like
I
an
agree.
East team versus West team. It should just be like, here's your All Stars for the league. And then
Yeah.
I think that same person said it should be like a first team, second team, which is
Mm-hmm.
what I think the NBA kind of does
Yeah, I
with
think
their
that'd
All
be
Stars.
better too. Yeah, just because
Yeah.
it's unbalanced, right? So you
Yeah.
have five quarterbacks in the West trying to get All-Star over four in the East. So yeah, I completely agree. They should have first and second team, but again, just I don't understand why they changed the name. And then also with the CFL, so they announced a continued partnership for the Truth and Reconciliation as part of Orange Shirt Day. So it says part of the call to actions, I guess, in this is using indigenous logos. I think it was 7 of the 9 teams last year used them. Just the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Montreal Alouettes didn't. We saw Calgary wearing uh, their logo to or not today, yesterday, I guess. This week, the rest of the teams are going to be doing this in week 17, which includes orange and white practice jerseys,
Okay, that's yeah. I was gonna say
and then
that.
raffling them off for various charities. So love to see that. And then lastly, just before we get into the games, we have a bit of sad news. Former Saskatchewan Roughrider and BC Lion Ben Fairbrother passed away in a motorcycle accident in Edmonton on Friday. He was drafted by the Riders in 1997 out of the University of Calgary and played 4 seasons with the Green and White, and then 3 more in BC, retiring in 2003. Currently, he was the offensive line coach for the University of Edmonton Wildcats. He was just 51 years old. Our condolences go out to his friends, family, teammates, and players.
Yeah, that's quite sad. I mean, especially if he has a family, and I mean, obviously, being a coach, he's probably heavily involved
Yeah,
in those players' lives too, right? So you got to think about all the players and his other staff there. So yeah, that's
yeah,
unfortunate.
really tough. All right, well, we will segue into the games here. So the first game we had Toronto visiting BC. Just before we get into the game here itself, I just want to kind of talk about we saw these shirts that the Lions were wearing, see something, say something, which was part of the team's Be More Than a Bystander gender-based violence program. So after the game, Lions quarterback Nathan Rourke had the following to say about the comments that he made in April about the Chad Kelly investigation. Back then, he tweeted, "I'm disappointed with the lack of urgency expressed by both the CFL and the Toronto Argos. This issue must be viewed with the utmost seriousness and concern for the truth. What example are we setting for boys and girls across Canada if we can't practice what we preach? Hashtag be more." So he said, "I stand by what I said. I mean, I'm wearing the shirt right now." Referencing the shirt was "See Something, Say Something." I know I'm not the only one, but I do feel I have a platform to be able to say certain things, a platform that I often don't use, but I think at the same time and place was right for me to say something, and I'd say something again if it was in the same circumstance. Asked about it after the game, Argos quarterback Chad Kelly said, "I do not have anything to say about that." What are your thoughts on the shirts, the timing of the shirts, and the overall program that the Lions are kind of representing here?
Um, I think it's safe to say the Lions. Well, I think we'll all agree that the Bomber social media is by far the best on Twitter or any. Uh, but I think
I do want to talk about Toronto's for this game in a second here, but
no,
yes, I
that's
agree.
fine. Like in general, like a
Yeah,
broad stroke, like
yeah,
the stuff they put out is very clever. And but when it comes to marketing, I mean, because Winnipeg had the Winnipeg Mafia shirts a few years ago and stuff like that,
hmm
and it's just very smart marketing by BC because it draws attention to a very important matter. The timing I'm not going to say it couldn't have been better. I think it was obviously they looked at the schedule and and we know with everything that went down with the aforementioned quarterback and just how it was all handled not only by his team, the Argos in general, and the CFL in general. It was perfectly done by not only the marketing but by the what's the I guess it would be like the PR team for the BC Lions and Amar Doman's team. I mean, they're very savvy when it comes to this stuff. They've done other stuff in the past where you're like, oh, that's really good. So I'm not surprised they did it when they did it. I'm glad they did it when they did it. I'm just glad they did it in general. So yeah, it's I hope there's more. And with Nathan Rourke speaking out, not only previously when it first happened, but now basically saying, I still stand by what I said. He's a face of the league, right? Like everybody, he's not just some like second string quarterback or like some backup cornerback that no one cares about. He's the guy that everybody wants to see play. And when he's basically saying, yeah, I'm still agreeing with everything that I said before, and I think that more needs to be done, he's not wrong. And I hope other players speak up, because I'm finding, at least from a fan's point of view, from my point of view, I found that the league is not, they've kind of just brushed it aside. You don't really hear about it as much. And I think they should be more vocal about it. And I don't know, obviously we don't know what was said or was agreed upon with the whole situation with the aforementioned quarterback, but and why he was allowed to come back. But the league, you set a precedent, and we can't have, more of the same. Like we have to be better as a league. So
yeah, agreed on all counts there. So to the game itself, so BC started out pretty offensively, on offense, I guess. Unintended there. So they had 3 2-and-outs to start the game. Basically, the first quarter, they did not get a first down. However, they were able to hold the Argos to 3 field goals. One of those field goals came after Janarian Grant returned a punt 80 yards. And again, they were able to kind of stop that surge there. But, tough start for BC at home there.
Yeah. I can't remember who it was on Twitter said that I wish BC would decide what team they are, because they come out, some games they're on fire, they'll light you up for like 40, 50 points, but then the next game they come out and drop it dead. Granted, like you said, they did hold Toronto to those few field goals early on, and it was really close. I actually missed the third quarter, was doing other things, but it was very, when I turned it back on in the fourth quarter and it was 31 or 37 to something, I was like, what happened, BC? Like, but then I watched, and things, they just couldn't seem to be getting on for the whole game. Like the offense just couldn't click, right?
Yeah, and then the defense also, in the initial part, they were able to stop, kind of bend but not break. But then when your defense is on the field for that long, eventually they're just going to tire out, and that is what happened. So after the first quarter there, both teams traded field goals, and then they actually traded touchdowns in the second quarter, where Nathan Rourke got a touchdown right kind of near the end of the first half, and then he was replaced in the second half with Vernon Adams, and then subsequently Chad Kelly actually led the Argos on a pretty impressive 2-minute drive to get to the touchdown with 6 seconds left there. And then so in the second half, like I said, they did switch to Vernon Adams. What did you think about that switch and the timing of it?
I'm not surprised. I mean, if Rourke hasn't literally really been lighting it up since he came back. I mean, we didn't expect him, the first week when he came back and he had, turnovers and things like that, we're like chalking it up to rust, but he's been, what is it? It's his 4th game now, I think so. 4th, something like that. And again, he hasn't really been, I mean, because the Lions were 2-2 or 1-2 in those games as well, right? So I'm not surprised. Again, I think it's just they're trying to have that spark, right? And it's VA's been obviously really good this year, but coming from an injury, we didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
So, and I think I don't know what it was. Just watching, and again, I missed the third quarter, but watching the fourth, there just seemed to be like they were just off by a little bit, and that connection just in general wasn't there as a whole. Like plays were missed run, routes were being misrun, and things like that, and a lot of overthrows, a lot of underthrows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the defense just kind of reverted back to like the way they were during that 5-game slide they had early in the season,
Right.
when it just seemed like they weren't able to stop anybody. And then so what I said before about the Argos social media, so in this game we had another punt go off the scoreboard with the same referee, Ben Major, and he gave the nice clip again, which was pretty hilarious. And then so the Argos, since this is the second time they beat BC this year, they shared the footage of him saying again on their Twitter. With that, I thought that was next level trolling. So that was pretty awesome. So we'll go quickly to the stats here. So starting with Toronto, Kelly was 18 for 28, 268 yards with 1 touchdown. He also had 56 yards on the ground with another touchdown. Kadeem Carey, 11 for 41. Daniel Edeboboye had 9 for 34. So they were spreading the ball around on offense. Even Deontay McMahon had 3 for 22. So good running there. Receiving, they had Polk had 8 for 6 for 116 yards and 1 touchdown with that was the 52-yard touchdown was really nice.
Right. Yeah.
Davaris Daniels had 6 targets, 4 catches for 71 yards, and then kind of spread it out to some other ones there. BC, so all 3 quarterbacks played for BC. Nathan Rourke was 6 for 12 for 110 yards. Vernon Adams was 4 for 7 for 75 and an interception. And Chad Bryce was 2 for 4 with 1 touchdown, 32 yards.
Yeah, that was right in the fourth quarter, right at the end.
Yeah, the garbage.
And I think
touchdown.
they even had the backup running back in at that point. I think
they did, because Jordan Terrell, he actually finished with more yards than William Stanback, which was kind of surprising because William Stanback went off against Montreal the week prior.
Exactly.
Stanback only had 6 carries for 21. So it seemed like the Lions kind of abandoned the run as they got down early, which often happens.
They were doing that. Well, yeah, when you get behind, especially as much as that, you got to abandon. But a few things, yeah. They've been known to do that. They did that a lot last year.
Yeah.
I noticed that they would be behind in a game and they would just completely abandon the run, and they, obviously became very one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
But then even like this past game, like just watching it, like that interception by VA, like he was trying to do too much.
Mm-hmm.
And he put it in a place that it shouldn't have been. Like he tried to make a miraculous play, and it was, you're just, as a fan sitting there like, I can intercept that, and I'm sitting on my couch, right? So
yeah,
it makes you realize that, obviously these guys are still human and they make mistakes, but something isn't right in BC. They came out like, really great at the beginning of the year. Like the Riders were first in the division, and BC was right behind them, right? So it's been very interesting to see this very much parity in the West this year.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. So Lions receivers, Justin McInnes led the way with 95 yards and 4 catches. Keon Hatcher had 3 catches for 59. Katoy had 3 catches for 22. Again, not much offense, not much defense from BC there. That's the game. So Toronto ends up winning 30. Where is the score? 33-17.
That's what it was.
And so the next game, we have our second game that was on CTV, Ottawa and Hamilton. Would it kill TSN or CTV just to make a graphic that says CFL on CTV? Like, honestly,
Dude, I didn't notice because I was watching on that game on my phone as I was building Lego. I didn't notice, but what's with Ottawa having like 4 of the 9 games, or how many ever games they're putting on CTV this year?
It must have just lined up because they were doing all the early Saturday games, so it just must
Okay.
have lined up that Ottawa had most of those games or were playing in most of those games. So this was also the Hall of Fame game. So we had for the players, we had S.J. Green, Weston Dressler, Chad Owens, Vince Goldsmith, and Marvin Coleman go in. Under the Builders, we had Ray Yock and Ed Laverty posthumously, and then also they didn't get inducted now; they will during Grey Cup week, but in the media wing, Farhan Lalji and Steve Daniel. So congrats to all those people. Well deserved. And then I guess we'll just get right into the game here. So Hamilton opens the scoring with a field goal. Ottawa then tried a flea flicker on the next possession and got a big pass interference penalty. Look to answer, but after review, Hamilton gets the ball back after recovering a fumble deep in their own zone. Ticats unable to capitalize on the turnover, and the RedBlacks are able to tie it up on their next possession. So early on, overall, this whole game, I kind of felt like neither offense really wanted to win. It kind of seemed
no one wanted to keep the ball.
Yeah, the defenses were playing definitely better than the offenses, that's for sure. So then Hamilton got a good drive going, but again, Ottawa was able to force a fumble to end that. They weren't able to do anything with that possession. They punted back, and Lawrence Woods took it 83 yards for a touchdown. An amazing live cable cam shot that I know one Dave Stadnick just really enjoyed.
If he was watching, I don't know if he was watching, but
he must. Well, he answered my tweet right pretty quickly, so I'm sure.
Okay, so he was okay. That's good to know.
So Hamilton was up 10-3 after the first quarter. In the second quarter, again, Hamilton Ottawa trade off turnovers, but only the Ticats get anything out of it. So they got a field goal to go 13-3. The RedBlacks got a field goal, the Ticats got a rouge, and then Stephen Dunbar gets a 55-yard touchdown catch right at the end of the second to make it 21-6 at halftime. So Hamilton was able to take all that momentum into the break.
Yeah, it's crazy watching somebody like Hamilton because like they've got Bo Levi Mitchell, who's obviously a great quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I don't think their record does them justice. They played really well in a lot of games, very similar to the Elks early on. And I think that they've just been kind of had some bad luck go their way. But this game, it was like they were a very cohesive team. Like on offense, Bo was making the throws, the receivers were making the catches. Obviously, the special teams had the punt return. Was it kick return? Punt return.
Yeah, punt return, yeah.
And then, and their defense was just picking off balls left, right, and center, causing fumbles. I didn't look at the final stats, but I'd be curious to know what the overall turnover ratio was.
I'll let you know.
Because I guess I could look it up too. I do have the internet, but it just seemed Ottawa, again, very similar to the BC game. Once Ottawa got down as much as they did, they seemed to be trying way too hard to make plays.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there were some penalties involved and things like that, but yeah, Drew Brown threw it in, and then there were just some throws you shook your head at, like there, they were pushing into, I don't know which quarter it was. It might have been later in the game, and he threw an interception, but because he didn't see the Hamilton safety come over the middle at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he would, like, the safety barely had to move.
Yeah. So Ottawa threw 3 interceptions and lost 2 fumbles, so 5. And then Hamilton, they had 1 fumble and 1 interception.
Yeah. I thought it was a lot more. It just seemed that there was a lot more.
Yeah. So then in the third quarter, Ottawa actually turned those 2 turnovers right away there. And after having success with the ball, Ottawa turned it over, not the other way around. Hamilton scored 8 points off of those after a missed field goal and a touchdown, and then they took the lead 29-6. So it's at this point that Bob Dice decides to make the change. We had the second quarterback change of the weekend where Jeremiah Masoli came in relief of Drew Brown. And they were down technically 2 scores, but 2 scores that needed 2-point conversions, so 16 points. But Masoli gets in there, and the first drive he does really well. He leads them all the way down, and then they go 3rd and 10 on I think the 12-yard line, and they get a touchdown, and they get the 2 points. So now it's only an 8-point lead. What did you think when Masoli got in there?
It reminded me of when Trey Ford came in the games for the Elks, and it just seemed to spark everybody. But it happened to be that the defense for Ottawa couldn't seem to play to that same level again, right? To keep it up. I think they were able to do it for 1 or 2 series after that, but after a while, I think they were just too tired, because I know, and you'll probably mention it here, but I know Hamilton went down and scored again, right? Quite.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about, but before the score, I want to talk about it was 2nd and 1, and Antti Leader comes in for short yardage, as he usually does. He takes the spot of the quarterback there, but he fakes the sneak and he throws it up to Ticats O-lineman Nate Dumoulin-Duguay. Hopefully I pronounced that right, who draws the PI call. Now, as a larger fella and who have played on the O-line, I always love to see when an O-lineman gets a pass. So definitely had to bring that up.
Hopefully, to draw a pass interference at the same time.
Hey, that's just as good as catching it. Just as good. But honestly, that was a huge play, because had Ottawa stuffed them there, they would have got the ball back, only being down 1 possession. But because they got the first down, that did lead to the Ticats TD, and then they also got a 2-point as well to make it a 16-point deficit again. And then Masoli gets the ball and he throws a pick, and the game's over.
Yeah. That last pick, that I think that's the one I mentioned earlier, but where he threw it over the middle and that safety came out of nowhere and got it. And that was game over. But it's Ottawa is very surprising this year. I think they're doing a lot better than everybody expected them to, right? Yeah. I don't, because they're now 8-4-1.
I believe so. Yeah.
So, I mean, because they were the one thing that they were talking about on the TV feed was that if they win that game, they clinch a playoff spot.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the majority of fans, CFL fans, had Ottawa making the playoffs this year, let alone, with 4 weeks left in the season, to be, clinching a playoff spot. So, or having the chance to clinch a playoff spot that early in the season, right? Not like last week.
Absolutely. So I ran through the stats quickly here. Started with Ottawa. So Masoli was 13 for 19 for 183 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Drew Brown was 17 for 27 with 164. On the ground, newcomer Kalen LeBourne, he had 13 carries for 84 yards. So pretty good start for him. And then in receiving, Dominique Rhymes led the way with 10 catches on 11 targets for 129 yards and 1 touchdown, which was great because I had him in fantasy. Justin Hardy had 12 targets, 8 catches, 103 yards. And Jalen Acklin, he had 10 targets, 6 catches for 72 yards. Going over to Hamilton, Bo Levi was 20 for 27 for 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. For rushing, Greg Bell continued to look good, and I think a lot of fans are. Though, I think so. Yeah, because Milanovic Litre, which again, I don't know when did Milanovic Litre drop the Milanovic in his name, because they don't announce that anymore. Kind of weird. But so Greg Bell had 15 carries for 99 yards and a touchdown. Litre had 10 carries for 36, and Talia Tagovailoa actually got in the game there, and he had 1 carry for 0 yards. Leading the way for the receivers, Stephen Dunbar Jr. caught all his targets, 8 targets, 151 yards, and a touchdown. He had that big 54-yard touchdown. Yeah. Shamar Bridgers had 5 catches for 55, and Keandre Smith and Tim White both had 1 catch each, 1 for 22, 1 for 21. So quiet day from Tim White. But Hamilton, I think a lot of people were writing them off, and they're able to win again here. So they're putting pressure on Toronto for that last playoff spot.
Yeah,
In the East.
I think they were saying on TV that basically they got to win out. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not out of the realm, but I mean, it's a very long way to go for Hamilton to do that.
Yeah.
And especially if Toronto keeps winning, eventually it's going to be a point where you can't catch us, right? Because they said that they got one. They play Toronto next week, and then they've got the season series against Toronto. So next week's game is going to be very interesting.
Right. Yeah. Okay, and on to the last game of the last game of the weekend. We had Montreal and Calgary, and they tied. 19-19. It's worse than kissing your sister. Yeah. So this game was actually, as a fan, boring to watch, in my opinion.
That worked out well because I got a late start to it, and I didn't start till like 7:00, I think, the game, and it started at 5.
Yeah.
And I recorded it, and I don't know if it's my PVR or if it's my remote or how it's set up, but every time that the whistle blows, when I hit the, skip forward, it starts right to the next snap.
Mine does that too.
Yeah, so it's just perfect, right? So you're just like, dude, I watched a 3-hour football because by the time I saw them kick the field goal to tie it and send it to overtime, and that was awesome. So, but yeah, I didn't really see a lot in this game that I was like, oh, this was a big play, or was like, oh my god, like.
No. Yeah, it was just I guess it started out with Calgary just having a hot start. So they got a first, Mark and Michelle got an 18-yard touchdown on the first drive to get a 7-0 lead, and then on that kickoff, James Letcher fumbled the ball, and the Stamps knocked it out of bounds, and then got a quick field goal. So they're up 10-0 right away, and that's definitely the way you got to do it if you're gonna try to beat the defending Grey Cup champions at home. But then the defenses showed up and didn't really let anyone have anything.
Yeah, I mean, because like you said, they were up 10-0 very early in the game, and it ended up being that they scored pretty much only 6 points the rest of the way, right? Well, actually, not even, because they went to overtime tied at 13.
13, yeah. So they only because Rene Paredes missed 2 field goals. I know that.
Right. Yeah, he hit that one off the operate late in the game.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that was interesting in the game is the first play of the second quarter. So Sean Thomas Erlington blocked Cody Grace's punt and recovered it for a touchdown. However, the command center decided to review it and determine it was roughing the kicker. And
they were commenting it on, I think Dwayne Ford was doing color on that game, wasn't he?
No, it was Suter. It was definitely Suter.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, sorry. It was
he kept saying it was the plant foot. He never touched the plant foot.
No, he didn't. No.
The plant foot moved because of the momentum but he did contact the kicking leg, which I understand. But as far as I'm concerned, if you hit the ball, I understand why they call it the penalty, because that's the wording in the rule book. I tried to look up the rule, and all it says is unnecessary contact with the kicker.
But it wasn't like he was trying to deliberately hit the kicker. Like he got 99% ball and 1% foot.
Yeah, I know. And it was
and the thing is like, if you watch it in slow motion, which I've heard you guys talk about it before, because if you slow every play down to slow motion, every play's a penalty.
Yeah.
But he like you said, he got the kicking leg, came nowhere near the plant leg, which is what I think is the concern for the safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And I think what happened is that when he contacted, and I'm not saying that the punter, sold for the for the play or for the penalty, but he did a little bit of a twist and a flip when he did that. So it exactly, right? So he definitely, if I was giving him points, I'd give him the perfect 10 on that sell. But it was great. I mean, he was back there in no time to block that punt. Like he was almost untouched. Like you don't see that very often. You usually see block punts or block kicks like just by the tips of the fingers or something.
Yeah.
Like he got all the ball on that play, which was awesome.
Yeah, it just kind of sucks seeing a guy's hard work like get taken away like that.
Well,
like,
and they were so deep, and he immediately recovered. He like had to like kick it to himself because it was in his feet, and then he picked it up and he like rolled into the end zone, and he was excited, right? But
yeah,
I mean,
and just the momentum there that could have swung the momentum the entire way. Like I know Calgary wasn't really able to do anything on the next drive, and then the next drive is when Cody actually did score a touchdown. So
right.
I guess no harm, no foul there, but I just hate seeing plays getting taken away like that. Like I understand why you don't want to hit the plant leg, like you said, injury.
Right.
Like look at what happened to Chris Drevler with his plant leg, or well, I guess prone leg that got hurt there, right? So I understand why you don't want that, but anywho, so we go into the half at 10-7, and then you know what, there's really not much to talk about because until overtime. So I guess Montreal had a chance, or Calgary had a chance in the game to ice the game. And, you know, they had Rene Paredes tried to kick a field goal to make it a 6-point lead. He missed. Montreal was able to run it out, and Cody was able to lead them on a drive to get the last second field goal to tie the game up. So we went to overtime. And in overtime, it was just trading field goals. Again, nothing.
The one thing, at least in overtime, Montreal was able to move the ball a little bit better than Calgary.
For sure.
Calgary had really struggled. I don't know, like the play calling, like especially on that first series, the first mini game. There was 2 drops.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think they got a first down, but then there was like 2 quick drops, and yeah.
It looked like Montreal was going to score a touchdown, but it's just a really good defensive play at the end in the end zone there. Yeah. It looked to me kind of like they were playing for the tie a little bit in that second mini game, because I just felt like Montreal could have been a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, and Montreal's got a playoff spot, so they're probably, I'm not going to say they're going into like layback mode for the rest of the season, like shut it down mode. But yeah, the one thing I will say is that because you look at how the Elks have played Montreal a couple of weeks ago. BC beat them last week. Calgary played them really well this week for the most part, right? Held them, till relatively low score.
The Riders kept it close in both games.
It's Montreal isn't a juggernaut that's just running through teams and just lighting them up for like 50 points a game.
Yeah,
they're just. I'm not saying they're getting lucky. They just get the opportunities, or they make the best of their opportunities when it's given to them, right? Like they're scoring at the most opportune times and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I think they've been really good at making adjustments at halftime.
Exactly, that too, for sure.
And so I think, but again, I just didn't think like they were really aggressive in that second mini game, and they just took the tie. And as a Rider fan, I was really hoping Calgary would lose, but
so was I. But I mean, they're still below the Elks, which is good.
Yeah, it's just the tie kind of takes away that 1-point advantage that the Riders might have had over them coming into their 2 games coming up here later on in the season. And then I guess I'll just get to the stats quick here. So for Montreal, Cody was 19 for 26, 204 yards. He did have the 1 rushing touchdown. Walter Fletcher had 7 carries for 90 yards. Receiving, Keon Julian Grant had 8 receptions for 71 yards. Rambo 2 for 51. Sneed 4 for 38. Cody was really spreading the ball here, but again, no touchdown passes. And then for Calgary, Jake Mayer, 29 for 37, 236 yards, 1 touchdown. Dedrick Mills had 22 carries for 122 yards. So they definitely committed to the run this game, which is good for Calgary, because Jake Mayer's not going to win the many games. Tommy No,
I'll bite my tongue on that one. I'll bite my tongue.
Yeah, I'm the Jake Mayer hater. It's okay. Tommy Stevens, he has 5 carries for 8 yards, but he actually had a fumble on short yardage there in the game there, which is kind of uncharacteristic for him.
Their 1 yard line there. So.
Yeah. And then receiving wise, Mark and Michelle had 6 catches for 73 yards and the 1 touchdown. Reggie Bagleton had 7 for 68. Boo. And then, spread the ball around there a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I'm not a Jake Maier. I think he's I think I understand why Calgary moved on from Bo, but at the same time, I don't know if it was you guys last week or maybe it was on Turf District. They mentioned how they always seem to have that. Calgary's always seem to have that quarterback that just comes in and the next great quarterback, right? And I think they were kind of anticipating that with Jake Maier. And as a non-Calgary fan, I'm very happy to see it not work out for once.
Preach, brother. Well, that is it for week 15 of the CFL season. Just want to thank Joe for joining me here. Travis will be back running the ship on our preview show for week 16. Again, thanks, Joe.
No problem. Anytime. I'm a bit of a podcast junkie, so anytime I get on somebody's podcast, I'm
stay tuned for another podcast. Maybe has been talked about. Maybe we just need to get off our butts and do it. Well, thanks everyone. Take care of yourself and each other.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.